Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for joining us for this Color Vision interview. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Given the context, I'm doing extremely well.
That's great. That's great. So to begin, I'd like to ask you, what color could define your mood in this moment?
I think today I will be a vibrant pink.
Vibrant pink. So let's do the interview in a vibrant pink color, if you like.
Yes.
And tell me, what memory does this color trigger for you?
For me, it made me think of a big bouquet of peonies. And it's my favorite color. It's also the flower of the season. And it's something that is gorgeous, that is very lively, that is vibrant. It's also the color of love in a way. And for me, it's a color of something that is both very strong, but also something that is soothing.
Okay, beautiful. That's great. Okay, and so tell me, what is your passion in life?
I have many. I would say my first passion is probably traveling. And also, I would say I'm also very passionate by the work I do. I'm a trend forecaster. I work in the future, so it's difficult to separate, what is private and professional life, as I happen to actually be working in my passion. So I say it would be going in to discover things, to continue to search for some time what is not necessarily obvious in a way you do research. So I think that would be my greatest passion. And I think art is one of my greatest passion. Reading is another one. But it's always about exploring. It's also about trying to find new worlds and discovering new imaginary worlds.
That's awesome. And so you stepped in on my next question a bit. What is actually your field of expertise and what do you do in life?
In fact, I've been working in trend forecasting now for the last 25 years. I started first in design agencies, and my job was primarily directed to helping brands understanding trends. But I trained as a semiotician and a sociologist. So over the years, I grew that expertise to develop more a vision of the future in terms of societal trends. What's happening in society? Why is it happening? And what does it tell us about how people feel, how they behave, and what are the desires, their aspiration or their expectation in the years to come, and what could be the product, service, experiences that brand could deliver to answer to those new needs.
That's very, very interesting and very insightful.
Thank you.
Now, for you personally, during this current crisis, how are you living it? How are you navigating the situation that we're living?
I think I see two sides. I see on the personal side, it's an interesting experience because I work mainly from home. So on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't really change my environment, and I'm lucky enough to be in a great place. So, which is also a quiet place. And I realized also that in a way, I became much more aware of the importance of having a place that makes you feel secure, that makes you feel safe, where you feel as well in peace. You understand that otherwise your mind tends to wander all the time. On the professional side, it was a very interesting period because we just launched the company, The Prospectivists, a couple of months before the crisis happened. So it's still the early days. Of course, you get worried. You think that this is not the right time to actually launch a business. But because me and the team, we specialize in understanding the future, we actually find that a lot of clients are really interested in what's going to happen next.
Right.
So we had people interested in meeting with us, in having a presentation. We're doing a project right now for a client. The environment makes it complex because in a way, the COVID and the epidemic becomes a kind of filter in a way to everything you read, everything you do. I try to distance myself from that because I'm trying to understand really the long-term trends. And of course, the situation changes the way we live, the way we eat, the way we interact with others. But I find it's important to take the long view, not just to have knee-jerk reaction. What we tend to find and what I tend to find is a lot of what is happening now is actually, there were already the seeds of a lot of the paradigm change that is at play. So for me, I see this epidemic and this worldwide crisis as a bit of a, I would say, culture accelerator. It's a bit like, in a way, there were already a lot of little bacteria which were not viruses, but they were trends. And there is an acceleration in the proliferation of trends that were already beginning to happen in the last couple of years.
Like remote work, for example.
Like a combination, like this questioning about the capitalist liberal system, the need to review consumption patterns, the realization as well that we live in a world where there are really, really great inequalities between the 1% and the 99%. And of course, periods like that make it more obvious, because people who have a lot are obviously often in an easier situation, even if they are not immune to getting sick, but they have at least a more comfortable environment generally to live with. And we see that people who have more degraded condition of life are suffering greatly. So I think it's accelerating this realization that we are at a time of change, that we are looking for a maybe more human system or human society, right, human values. I think it also, there were all the quest for truth, for a sense of ethical values that were already beginning to appear, especially as we saw the emergence of the fake news, and there's so much information and disinformation. The appetite to understand what is true, the search for truth and for ethical engagement as well from brands is really, I think, in a way taking an even greater importance in this context, because it's the question of trust which is at the heart of also what's happening right now. Because we are surrounded by health issues, you have to feel that you trust your environment, that you're trusting your connection, that you're trusting where you buy your goods and how they're going to come. So it puts this issue of trust even more at the heart of the equation. And last but not least, I would say one of the greater trends, obviously, is also how we view the notion of well-being in this context. Obviously, it's very much related to a direct health issue, but we saw and we feel, and I feel that both on a personal and professional level, the notion of well-being has evolved over the years from being very body-oriented to being much more also oriented with taking consideration your mental health, even the soul, this idea of mindfulness that we saw arriving in the last couple of years that is growing. I think this pandemic in a way makes it even more obvious that you need to search for a sense of equilibrium. And what is also interesting for me is I also see a return to science. Science had been questioned in the last couple of years with the move toward alternative medicine, which also have scientific base, of course, but they're not often seen as such. The fact that we are trying to understand what's happening with the virus, that we're looking for vaccine, that obviously we look to doctors and scientific for an answer, is placing the importance of science again as part of the health debate at the core of the discussion, so that we realize that they both in a way intertwine. This idea that there are ways to approach well-being from a scientific standpoint as well as from an alternative, maybe more spiritual standpoint, are finally in a way coming together. While I felt that in the last couple of years, there were a lot of questions about the science, which were opening the door also to a lot of misunderstanding or distrust. And I think finally the balance is coming together. So I really see those three trends, things to do with trust, things to do with the mix of science and evidence, which is becoming yet again more important. And also probably the last big driver, in fact, as well, of what's happening now and was also at play, is also the mix between individuality and community on the other. This idea of the me and the we being intertwined, I think even comes more present when you are alone and you are connected through obviously a video call like we're doing. We realize that we have the proliferation of social media, which opens the door to a greater number of connections around the world. And it's an interesting path because we see that we can use them for personal, emotional reason as well. But we also realize that we are human social being first and foremost, and the lack of social connection in this context is also reopening to the importance of empathy as a big trend, I think, for the future.
So actually, going to what you're just saying, do you think this crisis will create new values for our society, or how do you see humans interact in the future?
I do think that it is that there will be new values coming out of this period, but it was already, the paradigm shift were already in place. There were already a lot of trends and a lot of people, and whether consumers, citizens, individuals, that were questioning the relationship to brands and what do they bring to society as well in terms of societal responsibility. What were their, how do they participate as well in a sense of a greater good. So those trends were already there. I think it's growing because, as I was saying a minute ago, I think this issue of who do we trust is going to become a very, very important issue, especially in a world where there is a quest for transparency. We are more and more inquisitive than ever before about the information that we get. We have to do check, you know, we have to check the facts more and more. And I think people are hungry for information and the right source of trust. It's interesting that it's not just a bottom-up equation anymore. It's also, you know, and it's not a top-down. It's also a bottom-up collaborative society also that is creating the tools to also share knowledge and share facts. So I do think that this is going to be a very important trend. And I think the importance of obviously health and well-being, as we will have to learn to live with this kind of virus over the next few years, is going to be more and more important.
You talk a lot about trust. Do you think brands will change the relationship with their customers, and how is the experience for the customer going to change in the future?
I talk a lot about trust because I think I saw that as being really much at the heart of one of the debate right now. And I think in a time where suddenly we are not consumer anymore, because it's, you know, you're not in a position where you can go shopping as you want. So you are probably a bit more considerate about also what you need and what you buy. And we have a focus on what is more, I guess, essential in terms of obviously the food, your health, and your direct environment to make you feel, you know, in the best possible way at a time which is complicated. We see that a lot of business are obviously under great difficulty as well to survive in the next couple of years. And I think who you trust and the relationship with the brand has to take this factor into consideration. Consumers want to understand more and more, what do you stand for? What are your values? They expect transparency in terms of process, in terms of sourcing, in terms of how you treat your employees more than ever before. And the fact that we are even rediscovering the value of all of those workers that nobody really thought about, which were, you know, the cashier at the supermarket, the person that actually runs the train or the buses, in a time where it's difficult to move around the city, makes it super important, because you realize that for the last maybe 10 years, we were talking about shareholders. Increasingly, we're talking about employees. So there is a shift already, I think, in terms of who do we value as part of the company.
Exactly. So I wanted to ask you, because you talk about how do you treat your employees and everything. Do you think company leaders will focus more on their employees' well-being, and how do you think they will do that?
I think first and foremost, they're going to have to, because for legal reason, they're going to have to provide an environment that is safe for people to be able to go back to work. And this is not easy. We see that in France, the rules are not yet defined. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. And interestingly, the states cannot probably provide all the answers. So companies have to get organized in order to get people to work in a safe environment. So yeah, there is definitely a shift to that. And we also, but that was also a trend that was beginning to appear a little bit in the last couple of years. We saw the issue of mental health at work, of stress, of people being under tremendous pressure for economical reason in terms of performance. I think the relationship and the way we define also the notion of performance will change. I think in a way, it's funny, even people right now say, oh, I don't feel really productive. Well, you are as productive as you can in an environment that is different, and you cannot assess it by the standards that we were even a year or 6 months ago. And they will never come back. Things will never be the same. We are undergoing a worldwide health crisis that is also doubling with an economic crisis that is going to hit us as soon as we get out of it. Things will never be the same. And in a way, I think the idea that a kind of index of well-being will start to apply both to brand and to corporation, as it will also to political institution and to government. The capacity of the states to take care of its citizen is also being in question in a very, very direct way today. And we see the reaction towards people in the US, to what's happening even in Brazil, how it happened as well in the UK, where, you know, or even in France, where, you know, certain government took certain steps to protect the citizen, others didn't. And in fact, you see the scientific community was calling for a global, worldwide approach to health, which we never used to have. It used to be the responsibility of each state or each local, area. It's becoming, in a way, a much more collective value, and it's becoming therefore very much directed to a collective sense of good that we have to protect for everybody around the planet. And for me, it's a very interesting trend. That's very interesting trend.
Well, Emma, thank you so much. This has been very insightful and interesting, and I really hope we can have a chat again very soon.
With pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us.